Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Mental Toughness and Body Show. My name is Robb Evans, and I'm your transformation coach and health strategist. Today, I'm really excited because we're digging into a topic that I know causes a lot of people challenge. And so today, I'm joined by Michael Lopez. He's a transformative coach, he's a speaker, and author of a great book called Change: 6 Science-Backed Strategies to Transform Your Brain, Body, and Behavior. Michael works with leaders, high performers around the world to create lasting change by combining neuroscience with practical strategy. He's helped global brands like Clorox, I hope I'm getting that pronunciation right, and Entergy. And his insights make transformation not just possible, but also powerful. And so, what I want to do today is really dive into what real change looks like and how to make it stick. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rob, across the vast oceans here. It's great to be on, as I mentioned, my first Australian podcast. So
Yeah.
this is great. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. I mean, you've got to love one of the great things that came out of COVID is connecting
Oh,
more with people around the world so effortlessly, right? And yeah, it's fantastic. So the first question I wanted to ask you, Michael, was really, what is it that excites you about change, and why have you dedicated your career to this now?
yeah. Well, what excites me about change are the possibilities I think that all of us have within inside us. That if we only had a toolkit to unlock it, we could realize, we've heard this phrase that on the other side of fear is the best version of yourself, and I've certainly experienced those moments. I know a lot of your listeners have, and yet, I think we've had some myths about change and what's really required. I think sometimes we've sold the easy button to people.
Yeah.
And there's some things in this that are hard, but they're possible. And so I just get excited about the possibilities of what people could become and where they can end up and the goals that they can accomplish. And so, for me, that's what it's all about. And I started out helping companies change. I came from a background of athletics, and so I was always an athlete who understood what it took to become a better performer on the field. And then I got to corporate America and realized we sort of forgot a lot of those principles about how the human brain and body work. And so I just got excited about bringing all of those things together, and that's what led to the book.
It's such an exciting aspect of humanity, I think. And I think about my own self. I came from like being a really broken little boy, I suppose, and
Mm,
growing to adulthood and not having that toolkit, and kind of like, I'll liken it to like this. I had to save up enough money to go to the hardware store to go look at the tools, to then find a tool, and I'd put that in my
mm,
toolbox. Then I realized
yeah.
that I didn't have a toolbox, so then I needed to get a toolbox, and then I had something to put the tools in, so I needed more than a screwdriver. Actually, I probably would have got a hammer first, but let's just bash
Most people
everything.
do. Most people start with a hammer. That's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure.
But I look at where I am in my life now, and what excites me is really about challenge, because challenge to me in my mindset is, all right, you're feeling challenged because there's change. There's like this thing called change, and you're
Yeah.
challenged because you're pushing against it. And what I've learned from myself is where I have grown the most is going through that challenge and through that change. And every single time, and this is the great part, the harder it is and the more emotional it is and the more it kind of gets you in your gut, not your brain, but in your gut, I know that on the other side of that is probably the greatest opportunity for growth in my life. And because I now know that, because I've done it, I'm about to turn 57, I've gone through a lot of that stuff. Divorce is probably, with children, is probably the most painful thing that most people go in their
Tough
life.
one.
Yeah, my young daughter at 15, she passed away.
Oh my goodness,
It's
Rob, I'm so sorry.
so, yeah, thank you. But like, there's all these things, but on the other side of these things, there is the most beautiful growth that I've ever had in my entire life. So my
Mm,
approach now is like, if this is the block of change, let me run into it, because I know that there's always growth over here, and if I stay here, I will just compartmentalize it, stick it under the rug somewhere, come back to it. Oh, it's still there. All right, I'll go back under here. And so now I run into it, because that means I'll get the change faster.
mm.
And then that's the growth. So that's what I love about it, and what excites me about it. So I'm really it's always great to hear what excites people about change because you get it. And I think we can learn a lot from like what you said about your athletics background, because you're always looking to get better, which means
Yeah.
you've got to optimize the change within you, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. First, Rob, I'm so sorry for what happened. That's, as a parent, I can only imagine. And
Mm.
I'm mourn for you. We just met, but, yeah, really appreciate what you
It,
just shared.
it's the, I don't know, it's probably the worst thing you can go through as a parent, right?
I can't imagine. I really, it's shocking. So good on you for moving forward and making a life out of the remnants of that experience. You've hit on something that's really important, and I think we tend to forget that we are the most adaptable species on planet Earth. If you think about the human experience and where we've come from and what we've created, problems and all, we are the most adaptable species on Earth. And yet there are sort of skills associated with that adaptation that I think a lot of times we tend to either not have a language for, or we simply do them in ways that are sometimes counterproductive. And so, the reason I wrote this book was change is a skill, right?
Yeah,
You've just described several change experiences that you went through, and in doing so, you've kind of updated this thing, this computer, right? Your brain that says, hey, the next time something hard comes around, I have a bank of experience that lets me know that I have the ability to navigate that. And, for someone who's maybe never gone through even moderate levels of change, or that they're comfortable being comfortable, or they're stuck in their ways, pick a phrase that people have used. The first step is to really prompt this sort of self-induced awareness that change is a good thing, right? Muscles grow under stress and
that's right.
change. Bones grow under stress and change. We learn under stress and change, all of these things. And so, I really wanted to give people an understanding that change isn't just possible, it's necessary. And so that's what I've dedicated my career to, and I'm having a great time doing it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's not always the hammer, right? And
Oh no.
you have different tools. Like if you're trying to screw the screw in with a hammer, then well, yeah, maybe you'll get it in, but it's not going to work as delicately as getting the Phillips head. Or maybe is it a Phillips head or is it a flat one? And so I do love that about, okay, what do I need to do to change this? And I don't know whether you find this, but I certainly have identified this about myself as a man. um, we tend to go into solution mode. And
Sure.
I've got two daughters, and one's with me now, but both of them taught me a really great lesson. It's like, okay, Dad, you're not always right, and just stop and listen and stop trying to solve the problem and just listen to your girls. And um, they don't want you to solve their problem. They,
Yeah. Yeah.
they
Well, I think,
want to listen.
yes. And I have daughters as well. They range in age from 29 to 11 months old. So
Oh,
I
wow.
have, I have quite the
Congratulations.
experience. There's a 12-year-old in the middle of that. But, I think one of the things that's interesting about what you just described, and I think it is juxtaposed against this idea of action versus maybe more, what I wouldn't call it passive, but reflection. Both of those activities are needed in the world of change, right? You need to reflect on the behaviors that are holding you back. You need to reflect on the strengths that you have that maybe are weaknesses in certain situations, right? You need to reflect on the unintended consequences of behaviors that maybe in the moment felt good, but over the long term, had some kind of a negative effect. And so that reflection of sitting and understanding, evaluating, analyzing, and challenging your beliefs and your actions in the past is really an essential element. But there is another truth about change. Change is a verb, right? If we want to be different, we have to do different. And while you use the example of solutioning as a way to kind of the typical male response of there's a problem, I need to go fix it, there is this idea that change requires movement in the direction of our goals. It requires failure. It requires experimentation. And all of those things, if you take a look at the book, we could talk about it. There's real neuroscience behind why those actions are important, what they do to your brain in terms of how they update this sort of prediction machine that is our brain, and the science of motivation and how it creates dopamine for us and those sorts of things. So, it takes both, right? It takes both reflection and then action.
Let's talk about willpower, because some people might say, "Oh, I just don't have the willpower to do it." My thinking around that is, well, willpower will only take you so far. Uh,
Correct.
so obviously you're used to working with high performers and so forth, but are people relying too much on willpower? What's your perspective on it?
Yeah, so there's really a couple things there. So first of all, most people define willpower in the context of not doing something, right? We think
Yes.
about willpower as I need to resist the urge to take an action. Don't eat the donut, don't have the drink, don't eat the chocolate, don't lash out in anger, whatever it may be, that is some sort of a negative behavior that
Yeah.
is in the front of your face every day that isn't good, but you simply can't stop doing it. That
Mm,
one of the reasons willpower doesn't work is in that context, it's a finite resource, right? If I tell you don't eat the donut, all you're thinking about is the donut, right? It's very, very difficult. So the first thing I talk about in the world of willpower is you have to redefine the goal. And what we're talking about here is an avoidance goal, right? Don't do
yeah.
something. We know that approach goals are much more motivating, right? When
Mm,
I'm pursuing something that is a choice or an activity or a behavior that I desire, I'm much more motivated, and it takes less willpower. It takes some willpower to put the effort in to go get it, but it's far less of a resistance experience and it's far more of a pursuit experience. And we know that from the science of motivation, when we're pursuing things, we're much more motivated, right? Dopamine is the hormone of pursuit. Our eyes are in the front of our head for a reason. When I'm chasing something I want, I'm very motivated to go get it. So that's the first thing around this idea of willpower. It's how you define the goal. And if it's just don't do something, we all know we've been in that moment, right? Don't do
yeah.
something is a very difficult goal because I don't have something I'm chasing. The second thing I would say is, and this is some of the great work of Carol Dweck in the world of growth mindset, and particularly some of the other work she's done around this idea of a stress is enhancing mindset. Our beliefs do play a role in our ability to generate willpower, in the sense that if I have this perspective that I'm somebody who's growth oriented, I'm moving in the direction of a new version of myself, and I'm someone who believes that the struggle of that experience is good for me, right? It may not feel
Yeah.
good, but it's good for me. Then I'm far more motivated, and I generate willpower becomes less of a finite resource in that regard, right? So, step one, define something I'm pursuing. And step two, develop a belief system that reinforces this idea that chasing and growing and struggling is, in fact, the goal itself. If I
Yeah.
define the goal as that, well, now every time I'm doing something that's hard, it actually is motivating because I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
this is good for me, right?
Yeah.
Every time I do this, it's good for me. So that those are the two things I talk about in willpower. It's about perspective and redefinition of what we're chasing.
I really love that. I often talk about the difference between motivation. I'll kind of say it's kind of like levels. You've got willpower, then you've got motivation, and then I talk about inspiration. Just
Mm.
curious, do you have a difference between motivation and inspiration? And then I'll give you my thoughts.
Uh, so the in the book I actually talk about this, and it's a great question, by the way. Um, Motivation is the energy that moves us from habit to change, right? By definition, if I want to change something, I have to break a pattern of behavior, and whatever that is, it could be something simple, could be something big, and create a new pattern. And there's some science in the book about, how people use the phrase rewiring our neural pathways. It's actually really not like that. It's more like repurposing the pathways that we have.
I like
But
that.
in order to do that, I have to deliver effort. And
Mm,
effort, we just talked about in the world of willpower, is a critical component of motivation. And so motivation is the fuel that gets us up and moving in the direction of our goals. For me, inspiration is sort of the emotional spark that I think gives us maybe the first flicker at that motivation that says, this is something I care about. This is something back in that growth mindset, stress is enhancing mindset. Motivation is it's sort of the body version of this idea that I can deliver effort. And for me, inspiration is kind of the heart and mind part of like, do I have an emotional relationship to the motivation that I'm pursuing? So that's what that looks like for me. I'd love to hear your definition.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, for me, I don't know, maybe this, I don't know whether this is going to offend you now. I,
Don't offend. I love
I,
it.
I feel like for me, like where I spend most of my daily work in coaching people is around their health, their wellness, their fitness, them, and most of it is up here, their
Yeah,
mindset.
yeah,
And
sure.
I talk about how motivation can be a little bit like sunscreen, like it gets you going, but you have a shower and the sunscreen comes off, right? So like
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
so
Yeah,
you could
yeah.
be motivated, say, by listening to us have this conversation right now. But then as soon as it ends and 15 minutes later, you get back into the transactional aspects of your life and it's like,
Mm.
oh, what did they
Oh,
say?
yeah.
And for me, the inspirational stuff is exactly like what you said. It's what's that emotional aspect that is pulling me towards something greater. So I like to think that motivation is like maybe there's something down here that I'm bringing up to here, but to me, the inspiration is like, what am I reaching for? Like
Mm.
where
Yeah.
do I get to? So that's kind of
I
how
think we're saying the same thing. It's sort
I,
of two sides of a coin. And what I would say is, I say this to my clients all the time. You know, people go to seminars, weekend retreats,
yeah,
inspirational talks,
yeah,
and they
yeah.
get super fired up, right? And
Tony
they
Robbins, great example.
yeah, yeah, they show up and they have clarity of purpose and they have clarity of goals and they've decided that tomorrow is the day that they're going to start that activity. And that's great stuff, right? But nobody ever changed because they went to a 8-hour seminar. You change because you have the
Yeah,
ability to sustain that repetition of effort over
yeah.
time, right? It takes practice, it takes failure, and all of that. So I think those concepts work together. I think we're saying the same things and maybe using the other side of the word.
To be honest,
Yeah.
I think you're saying it way more eloquently than I am. I like your version. I'm going to have to replay this and write it down.
That's
Um,
okay. Yeah. It's all
but
good.
I do really like that. I think you've hit on so many. I think we're so aligned here in our thinking. You mentioned before about well the consistency and also the work. I love the work. I love the work of the work because I know what it takes to achieve the change or the growth. You call it change, growth, whatever. Growth is change.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I love that process because I know that I will never get that without the work. And the reason I'm going to do the work for me is about I'm a very motivated person, but I need that deep emotional thing of what is it that's, drawing me to it. And like people often say to me, I don't understand how you do what you do with, like I mentioned my daughter, like we're up to $56.5 million of funding now of change for eating disorders, which is what she passed away from
Wow.
because of the work we're doing with her legacy. And I just became kind of sick and tired of feeling too sad. And
Mm,
and it's not like the sadness ever goes, but I say
can
it's like the
imagine.
ocean. Like the ocean's always moving. It's just sometimes there's a tsunami and sometimes it's just beautiful lapping up
Yeah.
against your feet, right? And finding that purpose and a greater meaning for that enables me to keep on doing the things that I'm in doing. And so I came up with, up to the point that she passed away, I think I had something like 30, 32 reasons why I did what I did, like going deeper and deeper, like why I'm so passionate about my own health, why I work the way that I do, et cetera, et cetera. And I created like another 8 reasons because she's not here anymore to drive
Mhm.
me, because that's the way that I operate. I wanted to have
Yeah.
how can I have her sitting on my shoulder and driving me, even though she's not here, and because she's not here. And
Yeah.
so for me, that's tapping into that, that emotional side
Yeah.
to find a greater a purpose for why you want the change.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, Rob. And I would say you've hit something in there that I talk about in the experience of change. Two things that are really important is the sort of the goal and the work. And what you've described in your experience, which is just so incredible, is there is a direction of your goal. There's a vision, and there's an arc of where your focus is and the direction that you're heading. But your near-term focus is on the work. It's on the work of building. It's the work of the work. And what happens to people that fall off of the change wagon, so to speak, is they're so focused on the end of the journey that
Yeah.
they forget to fall in love with the journey of change. And the journey of change, you mentioned having a hammer. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just sledgehammer our way through our goals? But the truth is, change is more like finishing work. It's very detailed, repetitive,
Yeah.
focused effort that's about small movements that over time create large outcomes. And I spend so much of my time working with leaders in all types, telling them stop focusing on your goals and start focusing on the effort and the work. The
Yeah.
goals will come. You may even find in the execution of the work that the goal doesn't even matter anymore,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
that you had a small version of the goal because you've created something so much bigger. And so I just love the way you've described that. Clearly it's a very personal experience for you, but I spend a lot of time helping people say, look, instead of trying to lose 10 pounds, just exercise 3 days a week for 30 minutes for
Yep.
4 weeks and just check it. Did you do it? Yes or no?
Yeah.
That's change is not
That's the goal.
it's
That's,
not sexy, right? It's, can I repeat the behavior long enough
yeah.
to move from effort to habit, right? I need to move as many things from the this is hard, I have to think about it category into the this is just how I operate. Like you're just, I'm a very health oriented person too, right? I get up in the morning, I take a cold shower every day. It sucks. And then I go work out, and it
Yeah.
never sucks less. It's just I've become a person who repeats that behavior because I know on the other side of that experience, I feel better. And
Yeah.
future me
Really.
enjoys the fact that is something I did in the past, right? So all of those things, and in the book, I talk about some of the science behind why those things work the way that they do. But yeah, we share those attributes for sure.
Yeah, that is spot on exactly how I work with my clients. And it's not, I've been doing this full time now in business for 16 years. I used to be a chartered accountant. I did that for 19 years and found it really boring, and now do something that I love. But yeah, I always talk to people about, they come in and say, I want to lose weight, or I want to, achieve
Yeah.
this outcome. So, okay, fantastic. And then I dig into their why, trying to, why you motivate, why you inspired to achieve it. And I say, okay, well, what I want for you is to teach you the principles that you can live a healthy lifestyle for the rest of your life. No diets, no like let's hit this hard for 4 weeks and then on your bike kind of thing. And the result that you've just told me about is just a byproduct of getting these things right. Forget about that and focus on, if I tell you, like you just said, which is how I program my clients, 3 strength sessions a week. Let's do around 10,000 steps a day. Great. You're doing 5 at the moment. Great. Let's see if we can do that for the next week, and then we'll take it up to 6 and see if you can do that. Let's drink water.
Yeah.
Let's just say, okay, you can't eat 6 healthy, nutritious meals. Fine. Can you get breakfast, lunch, and dinner in, and maybe a snack? And let's just clean up your food a bit. No takeaway. Take out your alcohol,
Yeah.
or reduce energy drinks, and all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing becomes the byproduct. And I think this is the same thing to do with wealth. Most people think happiness equals all the money and everything, but the reality is, if you love what you do and you focus on that, the wealth comes with the right, assuming you're not spending it all and whatever. But
Yeah.
that is really just the outcome. And like, I've had the pleasure of like having on this show celebrities, billionaires, and outside of the podcast, just I'm a little obsessed with studying success. And not one billionaire set out to be a billionaire that I've spoken to, and not one of them talks about how important the money is. It's the impact and the love that they have for what it is that they do.
Yeah.
And the money is just like, well, how you keep score and whatever, but they don't really care about the money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And one of the things I say to people, and I just love those examples. change isn't about accomplishing goals. It's about building new patterns, right? If I
Yeah.
can build a new pattern, the performance will come. And I spend a lot of time telling, CEOs and people, stop measuring ROI and start measuring the effort taken on the inputs to performance, right? So if I want to be more effective as an organization, how do I make decisions? Am I making them faster? Am I delegating more effectively? Am I failing quicker and bouncing back from missteps? Those are the things that ladder up to new performance, right? If I was going to ask you to run faster, I wouldn't just tell you, okay, we're going to go on the 100-meter from 11 to 10:05. What I'd say is, okay, what's your stride length? What does your start look like? How do we look at your foot turnover? What's
Yeah.
your strength overall? What's your flexibility? And we
Yep.
would work on those inputs.
Yep.
And over time, you'd repeat those inputs enough that the outcomes would start to turn in the favor that you want. And so it's
Yeah.
such a hard shift for people because we're very outcome oriented
Yeah.
as a species, right? There's a funny part of the book that I won't spoil, but I talk a lot about vision boards. There's been some studies about vision boards, and what they do to our
Do they
motivation.
work? Do they really work?
You got to read the book, but
Okay.
it's you can maybe guess. They
I,
don't have
I've
the
never,
effect.
they've never done anything for me.
They don't have the effect that you think that they might. So that's the thing is, it's really about understanding, how do I create the motivation to build new patterns, to repurpose the pathways in my brain that are being dedicated to something else so that I can create better inputs that lead to better outputs. And that really is what the book is about. And the six principles are really tools, back to this analogy, right? It's about having a diversity of tools. And I say this in the book, is that, there's a formula for change, and I know the principles that drive change, but it's not formulaic, right? What works for you might not be the same
Yeah,
combination
that's
of those
right.
six variables that work for me. And so what I've aspired to give people is an understanding of what are these six variables: our environment, motivation, stress, effort, focus, adult learning, all of these things. How do I take those things and then put them into a recipe that works for me? And how do I start in a way that I'm not trying to take the hardest problem in my life that I've been trying to change for 30 years? I don't start with that one, right? I start with some things and I get a few base hits or a few quick wins, and then
Yeah. Build
build
momentum.
the skill of change,
Yeah.
because you can build it. It is a skill. You can learn it. And that's what the book's about.
Yeah, fantastic. Which is why you need a coach as well, right? Because you can look at
Oh, absolutely.
people
Coaching is
and
essential.
say, all right, well, those things, you just say, well, those things don't work for me. Okay, well, let's pick the one that will work for you straight away so
That's
you
right.
can get that momentum.
That's right. There's a thing. Just maybe I'll just do a plug for coaches. I coach executives, but I still coach sports, and I'm a big fan of that. But you need three things in order to learn as an adult. You need to do something frequently, far more frequently than you
Yeah,
would really
think
wish to.
yeah,
You need to fail, and you need feedback, right? And that feedback has to come from outside of you. And so coaches are essential in that journey.
yeah, yeah, brilliant. I think I need you in my back pocket because you say things way nicer than I say. Has there been a moment like in your life, one that you're happy to share, perhaps where perhaps change has failed you, and perhaps what you've learned to become a better person, better coach?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know that I look at any change experience as a failure, because I think there's something to be
You
learned in
grow in
everything.
everything. Yeah, yeah,
And I think, I'm somebody who I do have a growth mindset. And even though things are difficult, like you have described, I have been divorced and gone through a difficult part of that experience. Certainly next to what you described, the hardest experience of my life. And there's always things in that experience I could have done differently and better.
yeah,
Moments where I didn't show up the right way, or I had the wrong goal, or just the wrong attitude. And we're all good now, and I've gotten remarried and have a little baby, and life is full of all sorts of things. But I think it's only a failure if you fail to learn from it. The truth is, mistakes are one of the largest signals to the brain that something needs to change, right?
Mm.
Mistakes create the opportunity for neuroplasticity. And I say opportunity because if you don't learn from it, it's just a wasted moment. And for me, I've been fired from clients before that seemed like the end of the world. I've had jobs that didn't work out the way I thought, and I thought the world was going to end. And at every point, it takes some time, but if you can go back and look at that, I call it watching the tape. It's, a sports analogy of I went back and watched the game I lost. Where did I
Yeah.
go wrong? How did I underestimate my opponent? Where did I not prepare? Where did I let, my emotions get the best of me, or, whatever it may be? And how do I practice that differently next time? So yeah, I've had hard moments. I'm a human being, things I wish I could have done differently, but at every point I've tried to really just sit in that and
Mm.
understand how to get better from it.
Yeah, great answer. Well, with the growth mindset, personally, I find one of the greatest challenges that I have is because I guess part of it is conditioning, right? You're conditioning yourself to keep the momentum going, doing those little things. And like at the age I am now, there's like pretty much every area of my life I've been practicing for so long now. It's like I know that like my morning routine, what is you just had a sip of water. It's like, all right, I know I want to drink 3 liters of water every day. I know I want to take these supplements. I've got to do it here, 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 here. And I've conditioned myself to be constantly focusing on growing. Now, of course, that's the one side. The other side is you can't switch your brain off. So I'm just wondering on how you cope with that. Like I get to the end, say like today, for instance, a public holiday, we're heading into Easter and stuff. I'm working all day. Um, I'll spend some time with my daughter later on, but I just focus on working all day. And so for me, the concept of going on a holiday just doesn't exist. It's like I would be so bored sitting by a pool, just like, oh, this is great. There's the water again. I need to be doing something. So I would be
Yeah.
strategizing or doing something. I'm just wondering how you personally deal with that yourself.
Yeah, it certainly is the thing, right? The way we do some things is the way we do everything, right? So there's a certain pattern that can overextend itself, and I think it's important to know that every strength is a weakness in the right circumstance. And so, there's times where you do need to shut off or shut down or reboot or, rest, pick your phrase. I try to I try to remind myself that pushing hard all the time is only emptying the tank that I have to give in moments that really require me to push even harder.
Yeah.
And so energy is also a finite resource. And so I try to remind myself, particularly with sleep,
Mm,
it's just so essential that you've got to do it. And I realize that I'm better when I get better sleep and that sort of thing. The
true.
second thing is I've realized that in moments of maybe quiet, when I go on my long run or when I'm not working, I have some of the best ideas and
Yeah, me
thoughts
too. Me
when
too.
I can stop and slow down. And so I trick myself by saying slowing down actually isn't meaning I'm unproductive. It means I'm reflecting and synthesizing, and there's going to be a great idea in there if I can just let go and relax a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's the high achiever's way of playing a trick on yourself. Like, hey, watch, I'm going to do nothing, but I'm really doing something. I also have, kids that require my attention, that I do things with them, and I have a wife who reminds me to slow down. So I'm surrounded by people that encourage me to do that. But
Yeah.
yeah, look,
It
I
works.
like the effort, I like the work, I like the service, and so it is a struggle. I don't always get it right, but I try to do those things as much as I can.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Michael, I know we could keep talking for hours. I don't know where the time's gone actually. Like this has been such a great insight. Maybe we'll get you on the show again and we can dig a little deeper
I would
on
love to.
another topic. Um, how people can get in touch with you. I'm going to put the links below in the below this video here, but let's plug your book. How can people get in touch with you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, my website, michaeljlopez.coach, is a place where you can find all of my social links. You can find a link to order the book. The book's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the normal places that ship to pretty much anywhere anywhere in the world. Just need to search for the title and it'll come up. But there's a link on my website to go find that quickly.
We'll put it here too.
Yeah. I do have a newsletter that I run weekly. That's part of my journey as a LinkedIn top voice. That's another thing that I do is every Tuesday on LinkedIn here in the States. I have a conversation with another LinkedIn top voice. I've been lucky enough to be recognized as one of those. And we talk about a range of business and lifestyle issues. It kind of, it really does vary. It's been really fun. I host that on my YouTube channel as well. So Michael J. Lopez 9 is the place where you can find me there. And that's also on my website. So I would encourage people to go to the website, subscribe to those things, follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn is where I'm kind of most active. And you can find a link for the book.
This has been awesome. Michael, I'm going to give you the closing word in a second, but I hope everybody, I mean, you've given so much value here. I think people need to go back and re-listen again because like if you are stuck in change, if you're stuck in a rut, then it's happening for a reason. And the way out of it is not necessarily as hard as you think. I love what you said about don't just keep focusing on the end goal. Focus on what you can do today. And I liked this, and this is I've said this on the last podcast I was on, actually. I have a problem with Tony Robbins and him constantly talking about take massive action. You've got to take massive action. Well, maybe there's a couple of people on the planet can take massive action regularly, but most people can't. So most people fail with that approach. I would much rather say, let's take those little micro steps every single day so that you can see that you're instilling these daily habits into your lifestyle that then accumulate into the massive action, which is going to happen over time, but you're more likely to be able to sustain that than constantly massive action. So I'm going to give you a closing word in a second, but thank you so much for today. In closing, I just want to ask you, what's the best advice you've ever had?
I got this question the other day, so I actually have two answers. One of them was a long time ago. The other one was pretty recent. The first one was always raise your hand for the hardest job that nobody wants to do. And I remember that because what came after that was even if you fail, people will respect you for being willing to take the chance. And for me, I've embodied that. There's a couple stories in the book that I share from my early career that were definitely in that vein. And the science of doing hard things, I actually talk about in the book as well. So that was a great piece of advice that stayed with me for a long time. The second one was actually just recently when I started my own company. I worked in maybe a couple of years ago, started my own company, worked in big consulting for years and decided to start my own gig and was really struggling with that experience and nervous and anxious. And my former college football coach, American football coach, said to me, you still have a job. It's just different. And that advice really helped me shift my thinking away from if I take this step, but to how. And for me, it was powerful because when we remove if statements from our life and we think about how, we actually realize that there's a lot more possibility than maybe we think there is. And so that was just a transformative, maybe less about advice, but more encouragement to shift my thinking. And I've just been super grateful to him for that.
Fantastic. I love both of those. Well, Michael, thank you once again for joining us today. It's been awesome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Rob. Thanks to all your listeners, and have a great long holiday weekend. And I'm excited to be on here with you again at some point in the future.